with another episode of A Pod Has No Name, the much anticipated finale pod. With me, as always, is Tom of House Stinson. What's going on, man?
Not much. I have been ready for this for a few days. We were gonna do it yesterday, but holidays and obligations got in the way, and I am ready to roll. As I ripped through each and every of these last 130 pages on Saturday, and quickly hit the Reddit to comment that I was done. So definitely
Yeah.
ready to roll.
Yeah, I had finished it earlier in the week. I finished part 4 like the next day, just because of how impossible it was to really put down. And then I read through part 5 a day or two later. I mean, before we're gonna go like chapter by chapter, favorite scenes, talk about what happened before getting into some Reddit comments and like user submitted questions just to talk about. But I also just, we finished the book. Like, let's just react to the ending and the closing arc, shall we? Give me just your unabashed opinions and reaction to what happened.
So honestly, my first reaction was like fuck our user friends on Reddit for telling us to read a book in between starting Words of Radiance, because this was hot fire and I wanted to immediately hop back in. But soon after, I calmed down and came to the conclusion that they probably know what's best for us. And
Yeah, well, it seems like Warbreaker and The Way of Kings is interchangeable. Like, I'm sure some people probably read Warbreaker first and then jumped into it. So we're doing it in a little bit of a different order, but I think when we read Words of Radiance, the payoff will be worth it. And we're doing Warbreaker in a bit of like a speed run. So I agree. Just the ending of it leaves, especially with the epilogue, right, with Talonol coming back. That was like the biggest WTF moment for me, I think. Right at the end there, and especially with his dialogue to add to it. But it was, I think the payoff will be worth it later on. You know what I mean? Just having all the information, even if it is just side characters. I'm looking forward to it. Now, let's talk about. I just wanted to hear your reactions to a couple things. First, let me just rattle them off. Sadius betrayal. What was your reaction to that?
I mean, honestly, like I was surprised. I had come. I feel like this has been kind of well known, but I had totally come around to the fact that I thought Sadius was on Dalinar's side, and that he had flipped, and Dalinar had misread the situation, and then he had to unite them all. Yada yada yada. So I was pretty flipped on my head, and then at the same time was like, of course. One of those times where you're completely surprised and astonished by something, but at the same time, it's a bit obvious to you after it happens.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who was commenting was mentioning that 67 and 68 were, these jam-packed chapters. And, honestly, towards the end there, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen on that bridge run. I thought, it definitely didn't go how I expected, because even though I was questioning Sadius and whether or not he was genuine, I didn't I didn't see like a full on betrayal like that coming, like at all. So those the ending of part 4, then even into part 5, like those last 150 200 pages, that was like one of the most epic endings to a book, I think. I've read, just because everything twisted at that, with 150, 200 pages left when Sadius leaves the plateau. I think Sanderson did a great job of, like, he makes you think, like, I was so invested in an escape plan. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed like an escape plan is where it was going. An escape plan was like, it was in motion to happen. And then it just, at the last second, it just like twist, but in a way that was definitely built up and hinted at. So masterfully done there by making us, pointing our eyes towards a couple different plots, and then building up, the real one kind of behind the curtain. I thought that was really masterful. You know what I mean? That's just the entire plot in general.
Yeah, and the thing I really appreciated, I think, about all of the different, and we'll go through them one by one, but this is just one more thing I want to say generally about the ending. The thing I think I really appreciated is that similar to other series that I've enjoyed. The obvious one coming to mind right now is A Song of Ice and Fire. Is the ability to close doors and to give you fulfillment on certain plot areas, for lack of a better word, certain storylines. But when you close those doors to open two more doors,
Yeah.
that just put those hooks in you and really give me that feeling of, like that true feeling of addiction. Like it really had its hooks in me. Now I want to know where everything is going moving forward. It was masterfully set up. It was patiently paced, this whole book, and then really got rampant there towards the end. And then, like I said, did a really good job of closing doors and opening up new ones as we move into the next few books of
Yeah.
this chronicle.
I also did just notice, and I wanted to mention Soulless Cara, who has commented a lot on a few of our episodes, gave us like a pretty solid description of the wine. We asked for that last week, so I'm actually enjoying some rosé for the finale pod. And orange is not intoxicating by Richard standards, but we're gonna. This one is okay. This is more like Adeline yellow. You know what I mean? Take the edge off.
That's right. That's right. We can assume that the color spectrum is flipped in Rochar, so do not be
Exactly.
concerned.
Now, this one. Tell me what your reaction was to the Shallan, Yasna, the Parshendi have been, are the Voidbringers have been living among us the entire time, because that was, other than the Taravangian, which we'll get to
Yeah.
in a second, that was, I think that we like took a stab at that earlier in the series, like we thought about it, but then as it went on and we learned more about the Parshendi, I kind of, gave up on that theory. And I don't know if I'm curious what's going to happen in books 2 and 3, because I still don't know if I'm completely satisfied with that. Like, were they used by the Voidbringers against their wills? Like, I'm still, because those stone creatures, the black creatures, Dalinar has had visions of different, what I thought was the actual Voidbringers. So the I don't know if maybe the Parshendi used those creatures or if they were used by the Voidbringers, but what was just your reaction to that? Because I know that was like, I was thinking about that for like 10 minutes after I read it. I was unable to really move on because I was hung up on that.
No, I was definitely in a similar space with that. And kind of an interesting storyline where they not only did they defeat the Voidbringers, they basically enslaved them. And that's what you get with the Alethi and their relationship with the Parshendi. But it seems to me, I guess there's an uprising, which is this Parshendi uprising, in the in the West here, or they were. So I don't really know. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, especially with the information we get in the next chapter, that it seems like their hand was forced almost into this war and into like this current battle on the Shattered Plains, and that there's dominoes to fall at like a higher level of existence, particularly
Regarding like
that
the
we're going to see.
desolation and everything.
Yeah, and I think maybe they're the maybe they're the Voidbringers, but I don't know. I'm still not 150% convinced at this point. I think there's a higher power that's kind of,
or I don't know, whether or not they, I'm sure whatever happened, right, that they were used by the Voidbringers, they were in cahoots with the Voidbringers back then, maybe. But what I'm curious about is what that alliance, like what was behind that alliance, right? Like, why did they work with them? Because there's clearly like these stone creatures and these black, like xenomorph looking creatures that Dalinar fought. So like whatever the relationship is there, I'm curious about. I'm also curious because in the prelude, right, when we're with Kellic and he finds the king of the heralds, Jezariah, he there's no mention of the Parshendi there, and he only sees the stone creatures. And at the end there, what the King of the Heralds tells Kellic is that they're going to tell them, tell them that they won, and it'll be easy enough to believe. So, like, where does the Parchment and the Parshendi come in at that point? Is what my question is. I'm also curious about, they seem to communicate with music, right? And it's been said in the dialogue that it seems like they can all kind of sing in the same beat from, maybe even miles away, right? Like they are in unison that way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a game I play called Stellaris, and in Stellaris you can like create like a kingdom, like a space, it's like a strategy game like in space.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the, like, you can pick your race, and you can make your race have a hive mind, and a hive mind is basically like all of the organisms are like they can think in each other's minds, basically. So like it's only one entity, but they have multiple bodies, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, like, are the Parshendi a hive mind where they can all communicate with one another? And was the Parshmen like, were they cut off from that? And that's why they don't have music, and they're like, enslaved in that way. Like maybe that's what they did to them, like cut them off from the hive mind, maybe. But I'm not totally, like you said, I'm not totally convinced with all the information that I have and all of the lack of information that we have that, they are the Void Ringers. I'm a little, I don't know. I guess the description with like the skin is, black and fire, with the marble red and black skin, like all that makes sense. But I have just so many other questions that I don't think we're going to, maybe in Words of Radiance or Oathbreaker. Somebody sent us a link of like unanswered questions, but I didn't click on that just because I felt like I didn't want to know when things were going to get revealed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was just a ton of questions. The Parchment thing was heavy. It was, definitely a lot to think about, because I thought we were on the trail, and then I kind of gave up on the theory, and then it ended up back being that way. Now, what did you think about when the Parshendi shard? But when we'll go chapter by chapter in a deep dive, I just have a couple moments here that I just wanted to share me and Tom's reactions to. But when the Parshendi shard bearer saluted Dalinar after the battle, what did you think about that?
So just quickly, I just wanted to kind of jump back into your hive mind thing.
Yeah,
that's cool. I think maybe they do have a hive mind, and they are able to communicate through song or some other special means of communication that the Alethi do not understand, and that potentially the Parshmen that has been, genetically like pushed from their systems through generations of separation and slavery from the larger mass of their culture. So what do you think about that?
Well, like they were cut off over time. You mean like generation by generation?
Right.
They're cut off from it. Yeah. So and that made them lose the music and from just not being closer to their homeland. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think just not being free and not being kind of within the Parshendi culture, like generation over generation, and then just further and further fading away from potentially that means of communication and that special ability.
Yeah, I think you're right. And too, Yasna said that some over time things would set them off that would make them violent in some situations. So like, I'm curious of what that would be. Like maybe they can get pushed, to into such a corner that either they just react violently, or maybe they realize what's been stolen from them and react violently that way. Maybe I'm not sure, man. I'm dying to know. I think at the end of Shallan's arc, we know that her and Yasna are going to go to the Shattered Plains in the Words of Radiance, and I think maybe we'll get a lot more answers on what the Parshendi are there. Like I imagine Words of Radiance would be Parshendi based, if I had to guess.
Interesting. Okay, like you think that's like a different tome?
Well, yeah, I would think like Yasna shows up, right? She finds Dalinar and Adolin, and tells him, that the Parshendi were, and it depends how long it would take her to get to the Shattered Plains. I'm sure that might be its own plot line. But like if she is able to get there and tell Dalinar, maybe they make a hired effort into studying them. Remember, there was one chapter where he had bodies sent back to the scientist.
Right.
I don't think scientist is the right word, but like to get studied,
Mm-hmm.
in the Alethi camp. So I wonder if maybe they would put more of an emphasis on like finding out what the Parshendi are if Yasna can reach Dalinar and let him know that. With him being High Prince of War now, I just imagine that it depends if Yasna and Dalinar were to be reunited, early in the story. But if they are, I would imagine that's what a major plot arc would be, or at least what I'm anticipating. Right, looking forward to, if I had to guess.
I think that's a good call. So sorry,
Yeah.
just to go back, what was your other question about the Shardblade?
When the Parshendi Shardbearer like saluted him, you know what I mean? Like, and that's like, I feel like the Voidbringers are known to be so evil, but they seem to have like respect for their opponents. He also said to Dalinar, like, it's you, like you're the one. I'll find the exact quote, but he seemed to like know who Dalinar was and have a respect for him based on that salute.
I think it was.
He says, this is what he says to him before Kaladin comes and saves Dalinar. He says, "It is you. I have found you at last." And then he salutes him at the end of the battle too, as they're retreating across the plains. So we've said throughout the book here now that they are probably more intelligent and advanced of the culture than given credit for, and our characters have said that throughout the story as well. Kaladin in the final chapter, Dalinar at one point. So just, I don't know. I thought it was interesting that he did that, and just to bring it more full circle for you, we know that Seth was hired to kill King Gavilar and start this war, but at this point I went back and I reread the prologue. I don't know if they initiated it, so like I was just curious of your thoughts on like the whole like respect thing, and it seemed like he recognized Dalinar for whatever reason.
Yeah, so I guess my initial thought was that the Parshendi. Well, so the reason they haven't been sending the Shard Bearers because they haven't had to, and like basically like their strategy is, they're like a bend not break kind of team, right? Where they'll send out the necessary forces and resources to bend to hold their position, but not to break. And then as the kind of as the Alethi adjusted their strategy, they decided to kind of roll out, their own mid-game adjustment. So like potentially like because of the way that Dalinar has fought here and in the past, and this is just like on a surface level. I think there's another way I could read this too, but this was my initial reading, was that the Parshendi kind of went back, said, "Hey, this guy's like their leader, like their master class, like," and it's like a part of their culture to show respect for, other warriors who fight within the code.
So that's a good point. I was kind of thinking on like a much deeper level than that. But now that you say that, I was thinking too, if you think about it, Dalinar and Adolin were always ahead of their forces fighting in a pair, similar to how the Parshendi fight. And I wonder if that, contributed to the respect factor that they have for him, or seem to have at least.
Yeah. And then the other kind of my other read on it would be that, and particularly with Dalinar and his visions and these kind of like appearing in multiple time periods, that, he might be someone or some being reincarnated, and that, these Voidbringers or these Parshendi remember him, or there's some level of respect or legend with him from those earlier battles and from those earlier fights that's been passed on, and or he's acknowledged as some kind of higher being passed on their side from the last fight, just because I guess that could be the read with him, like hopping character to character, like whether is he those different people and then he's just being reincarnate and these are kind of his memories, or is he truly visiting these people? So it could be something like that as well, but I think the first is a little bit more pragmatic and less kind of of a jump.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was kind of thinking. I understand, and I think I maybe agree with your former um, explanation. Now that you said it, but I was kind of thinking like maybe I wonder if the Parshendi are capable of having visions, or I wonder if they're capable of if they know. How ancient are they, and like, do they remember a time when there were a Knights Radiant? I don't know how involved they are, especially since they've been isolated in the Shattered Plains, other than their cousins that have kind of been neutered by the rest of mankind. Um, but I was kind of maybe on a deeper level, but I didn't really have an explanation for it. I
Hmm.
was just kind of I thought it was a mystery at this point. But I like the explanation that you had. Now I have two more like key moments here that I wanted to talk about, and then I had a couple things that I was going to mention as we go through the chapter by chapter outline.
Hmm.
But the next one was Taravanging's hospital, man. Like that Seth epilogue, or not an epilogue. It was just it was just a chapter in part 5. But
Hmm.
what a twist that was! At Taravanging, especially, there was one chapter with him, Shallan, and Yasna, where like she takes a photo of him and she sees, for the first time the symbol heads. But like he seemed like such an aloof character in that chapter. Like, what a is he the Varys of the Stormlight Archive? I think I'm ready to say that if you are.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I think he leans a little darker than Varys. I think Varys like truly leans down in the middle for what's best for the kingdom and then also for himself.
Yeah,
As opposed to, I think this is a lean into evil and a want for power. So maybe like a little bit more of a Littlefinger than a Varys.
maybe, but his explanation I bought almost. Like if I didn't know what Dalinar knew, right? Like if I had no sense of Dalinar and the visions and uniting a Lethkar and this and that, like him wiping out the old guard of kings and having a fresh start. Overall, I don't think is the worst plan. The hospital thing is that's like horror movie shit, for sure. But like it seems like he's late. Like he's definitely too late. But I don't know if his heart was necessarily in the wrong place. Like, does the I don't think the ends justify the means in any way. But
Right.
I wonder if he was doing it for like. It seemed like he was doing it for what he thought was the good of mankind. Like he was trying to set in place a foundation that could combat the desolation. But just I think he's more so what he didn't anticipate was that he's doing it at a time that is going to leave the world a lot weaker, if that makes sense. Without like I think he just maybe thought he had more time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's still like, I,
It's definitely dark, and like just say like I'm just going to rebuild the world is like that's
I
a
mean,
hell of
it's
a thing to
very
say.
Thanos esque. It's like,
Yeah, it is.
do you still consider Thanos a villain? Whether there's some potential merit, like there could be, like your logic could be sound for something, but your means of executing it, could be evil.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm curious. He was known as the hospital guy. Like he's the whole book. He's known Carbrandt as like the guy that he doesn't wage war. He builds hospitals, and then you realize that he's just letting people in these hospitals die as he drains their blood to like speed up the process.
Hmm.
Um, total super. Like I would imagine a chapter of like Shallan would have stumbled into the hospital, like how because that one chapter of hers was like such a great horror chapter.
Hmm.
Um, it seems like they're going to leave Carbrandt now, but that was, such a twist for me. Perhaps I've said this, I think, about 3 moments so far, but like maybe the biggest, twist. I mean, it was just one after another in the final frame there. Um, but like I was thinking, Carbrandt, like maybe in a future book, like they'll be attacked by the Voidbringers. It'll be like a major, um, maybe like a neutral port where like refugees go. I was thinking, anything but Taravangian having like a secret, sinister plot of his own.
No, that
Um,
completely like there was
I,
no hint of
yeah,
anything.
I was like, this poor guy is going to get absolutely bodied by Seth. Like, no way, no way, this dude
Yeah.
stands a chance. And then that happened. So, bravo on that. And I am curious. his last order, right, to kill Dalinar.
Mhm.
We might get Seth versus Kaladin. We might get Seth versus Dalinar. We might get a 2 versus 1. Maybe Bridge 4 as a unit versus Seth. Like it could be really like we could get some of these dream matchups we've kind of begun to discuss here on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to that. And
Yeah.
I'm curious what the stipulations to the order are. Like some of them, it would be like, don't let anybody see it. And then other ones would be like as many people as possible, like kill him in front of as many people as possible. So I'm curious to see how, what stipulations there are on this hit. You know what I mean?
On the Dalinar hit?
Yeah, on the Dalinar hit.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on his read on the situation, whether he thinks. I think it probably, like, I feel like Dalinar has enough of a public reputation that, like, to destabilize, to rebuild, that it should be something that's in public. Like, both as a fighter and just, like, as a
Yeah.
politician and a man.
Now this is a segue into I forgot about this one where it was in the outline for the chapters, but I forgot about to put it in the just to ask your instant reaction towards. What about Elhokar cutting the strap, man? What an asshole! Like what? Like the fact that that's what it ended up being is so absurd to me, and it's like it's so perfect. I really hope that Elhokar becomes like a cool character eventually because he is at the bottom of the list right now, but like you need him to be king at the same time. Such an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, I don't know. And we've seen it from both Sadeas and Dalinar at this point. Like, I think Elhokar is basically just a puppet, and they're the puppeteers. He's that type of king. I don't think he's ever really going to come into his own. I could see him getting killed and supplanted before I see him coming into his own and developing as a character.
Yeah, now I don't think it's been explained to us like what a succession plan would be like. If he dies, I don't think there would be one. I think Elhokar would just crumble into like different nation states, like House Colin, right, versus House Sadius. I think that's what it would end up being. So it could really, if he dies, it could really screw things up. With the desolation and all. So like you kind of have to root for him, even though he's such a jackass, which is, I like when authors make conflicted characters like that kind of. So we'll definitely see how that goes, and then the last thing before we get into the summary, real quick, Talon comes back, which I think means the start of the desolation, or the desolation is about to start.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, man? That whole Wit chapter, like he's asking guys what and I just want to say this was a pretty perfect, like the way a lot of times Wit says shit that I don't really know if there's a meaning towards, or like I think there is a meaning towards, but I have to like think about it for a while. And he starts off this chapter asking like what men value most. And some guy says art, other guy says to invent like engineering, type things.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of, pokes holes in them. And then after Talon comes in and warns of the desolation and he kind of collapses, he says what men actually value most is timeliness. And Talon was too late. I mean, just what a well-written epilogue, from him like framing that story in the beginning to then saying that, timeliness is what men should value most and Talon is too late. I thought that was just really perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely a enormous, like we've been wondering, I think throughout you and I have like kind of speculated if Talon was different characters who didn't realize it, or what role he had to play, and then he ends up basically just being that messenger and that that foreshadowing into desolation, and that the Alethi and these other races are pretty much on their own. There will be potentially no help from the Knights of Radiance on this one.
Yeah, I mean, like now that he's out of damnation, you expect the Voidbringers and the desolation to come soon after. What I'm curious about is and I don't know why my brain goes right to this, but it does. Now that he's out of damnation, I had the theory that the dying. I think people said that it was, from what I understand from that Taravangian chapter, what they're seeing something before they die, so it might not actually be Talonol's last, or like Talonol's words coming out of their mouth, like I had theorized. Although I still think maybe, like I could see that. But now that he's out of damnation, do you think the people in that hospital will continue to have, those like ramblings and like visions kind of on their deathbed? Just because I want to know if my theory was correct or not, basically. But now that Seth is going to head out of the Shattered Plains, I don't think we'll have a POV to answer that question. But I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled as we go forward.
I'm cheering for you, but I'm not that hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we'll see. But let's just go chapter by chapter now. We can do our favorite scenes and moments from each one. Chapter 65 we started with, and this was pre-battle. Dalinar doesn't want to make the Bridgeman do anything he wouldn't. So he's going to attack after they land. Right, Kaladin leads the decoys. Teft and Scar get shot. Scar gets shot in the foot, which I'm glad that they both lived. I just want to say that right now, because Scar was said to be, like, other than Moash, the best spearman of Bridge 4. So glad he made it. And like, this is a moment that makes me question, the whole Voidbringer thing. Dalinar surges through the Parshendi lines, and he has the thrill, and then, like, as has happened in past battles, he like notices or sees something that makes him like get sick of battle. And in this chapter, it's like a young Parshendi's face. Like he calls it a youngster, I think. And I think, I don't know if it's intentionally done because they're supposed to be like this like evil force, and he's trying to humanize them a little bit, or if he's trying to tell us something else. Like maybe they aren't the evil Voidbringers. I don't know. But that's it definitely makes me question what Yasna said. Whether wrongly or rightly, we'll find out. But one question I had for you was, do you think Dalinar notices the horrors of wars and gets sick of it because of the visions, the codes, or simply because so much of it has just taken a toll on him and his conscience for doing it for so long?
I think it's kind of the latter there. That just, well, no, I think it's a mix. So I think it is. He definitely has been greatly impacted by the codes, and going into that deep study of the codes. I also think it's just the wear and tear of someone who's fought, battle over battle, finally kind of realizing the carnage that they're creating, particularly for Dalinar, who it's clear had, a major change of heart, and adapted as a person. Like, was originally like this fearless soldier who it seemed would do anything, committed some great atrocity or great sin, and then kind of had a repentance.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you bring that up, and I was going to save this for when he gives a speech, but I think it's appropriate to bring up right now. When I reread the prologue with Seth, when he assassinates Gavilar, in the beginning of the chapter, he's kind of out where people are mingling, and Dalinar is just drunk, face down. People are telling him to go to bed, and he isn't listening to them. And he mentioned in a chapter later that he was drunk, passed out drunk when his brother was assassinated, and that's like one of the things that like drove him to look into the codes and like read that book and kind of change his way of life. So I don't know. I thought it was just an interesting. Dalinar has had an interesting arc especially when you look at it in that light, right? Of like, who he used to be versus the man that he is, both in the middle of the Way of Kings and now at the very end of it. So yeah, and at the end of the chapter, he notices that Sadeas is retreating, has abandoned the army. So then, like 66, 67, 68, and 69 are all just like, haymaker after haymaker of chapters. Man, really like it was hard to put down, and we said that a lot, but like I literally didn't put it down at when this happened. Kaladin sees Sadeas retreating. One of the justifications that they have is that maybe Sadeas was injured, but as he gets closer, they realize he hasn't been touched. And this is when we get this line, like Kaladin overhears him say, "I told you that honor of yours would get you killed one day." Real loser line there, Sadius. You just betrayed him. Honor had nothing to do with it. Bozo. Now, like I don't know. Sadius. One of the questions that someone submitted is, how much do you hate Sadius now? And I think Sadius is. Who I think should play Sadius?
Who?
Who I think would be a great villain to play him. I don't know his name. You might know his name, but he's the villain British officer in The Patriot.
Oh, let me see.
I forget what his name is, but he's like the main villain in The Patriot that whacks all of Mel Gibson's children.
Let's see. Keep going, and I'll find it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think he would just be a perfect. He seems like just the posh kind of like douchebag that could play Sadius. Now, this is like we switch back to Dalinar and Adolin here, and Adolin has this moment where they're arguing, and Dalinar says he was like, Adolin, you were right, and Adolin responds by saying, "You are right to follow the codes. You are right to unite Alethkar, and I was a fool for fighting you and wanted every step along the path. Perhaps if I hadn't spent so much time distracting you, we would have seen this day coming." And that kind of gives Dalinar what he needed to give this last push, right? That kind of filled his heart with seeking out glory and death on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Now, Dalinar's speech was pretty epic.
Yeah.
He said, I'll give it a quick read. He said, "It is time for us to fight, and we do so not because we seek the glory of men, but because the other options are worse. We follow the codes not because they bring gain, but because we loathe the people we would otherwise become. We stand here on this battlefield alone because of who we are. Death is the end of all men. What is the measure of him once he is gone? The wealth he accumulated and left to his heirs to squabble over? The glory he obtained only to pass on to those who slew him? The lofty positions he held through happenstance? No, we fight here because we understand the end is the same. It is the path that separates men. When we taste that end, we will do so with our heads held high, eyes to the sun. I am not ashamed of what I have become. Other men may debase themselves to destroy me. Let them have their glory, for I shall retain mine." If Dalinar would have died in this chapter,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like, it would have been a hell of a fucking way to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, he had his moment there.
Yeah, he had his moment there, and I thought it was interesting. We can talk about it more, but like he gives up the blade and the plate, and like he's being like the Blackthorn, but it seems like he's being a strategic version of the Blackthorn, like an evolved version of him. You know what I mean? That he's what this battle ends up bringing, and I'm just really curious to see the evolution of Dalinar in the Words of Radiance. Because it seems like he's really seen the light here. You know what I mean? Like almost like if like I said before that Dalinar reminded me of Eddard Stark, and I think the past like the man Dalinar used to be doesn't match with that description, and now I don't think it does anymore either. But it's almost like if Eddard like realized the game, if he like learned how to play the game, right? And I think that's like the version of Dalinar that we're about to see in the next book and even into Oathbringer.
Right. Yeah, the Ed that survives.
Right. Exactly. Now, the next chapter was, what I liked about these chapters is that each chapter was like Kaladin and Dalinar both as the POV. So like you got you know what I mean. You got a good mix of multiple perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought like this chapter was really interesting because I kind of felt conflicted along with them. Mattel orders them to catch up, and Kaladin says, "Oh, we need to rest. Like, we'll catch up. Don't worry about it."
Mm-hmm.
And they like Mattel just agrees, and that's it. Like they're just free at that point. Like now, like they can just escape without having to fight anybody. Other than the Parshendi and the High Storms. There's a million other things that could go wrong, but like the hardest part about getting out is now done. Like they're left alone. Did you feel conflicted at all with them, or did you kind of know immediately that they were going to go back?
So, I mean, I feel like narratively, I felt like they were going to go back, but decision wise, I guess like it would have made sense to leave right there. But at the same time, and I guess this is nothing you can guarantee, but like if they assist him, who assists, like maybe this is what's going through Kaladin's head. Like he assists Dalinar, who who has been betrayed. If they do survive and they do make it out, they have a higher chance of you know making it through this thing through that method than running away and being sought after in perpetuity. Plus, there's honor to this, and I think this is kind of the moment that we've been building towards for Kaladin as someone who he's a spearman. He loves being a spearman, and he wants to protect his men, and I think that honor and that need to protect ultimately took over, and that's kind of why they went in the direction they did.
Yeah, and I did just want to mention too, like this is the part where like Syl appears as a normal sized, like human sized Spren, and says that she's an honor Spren, that she knows what kind of Spren she is now. She's an honor Spren, and I see they seem to be closely related to the Knights Radiant, because of upholding oaths and honor. And Kaladin Kaladin had such a well written arc because, like in hindsight, think about it, right? He saves Amarim's life and is immediately betrayed, and like that
Yeah.
was the light honors that was supposed to have the most honor, and was talked of the most highly by dark eyed people, right? Now he gets to the Shattered Plains and he sees Dalinar Kholin, and people talk about how he is filled with such honor, that he's different than other Light Eyes, that he actually cares about people. So he's very similar to who Amarin was in that way, and Kaladin continues, like whenever he sees him on bridge runs, he thinks about that, about how he's probably it's probably just all bullshit. And that's for 1,000 pages that build up, and then he gets to the point where he has to decide: does he save the honorable Light Eyes again, and get his men killed? So I thought it was just hell of a payoff. That moment there where he kind of decides to go back, and everybody agrees. And then the next scene, Dalinar kind of sees a lone bridge crew charging the plateau as they're surrounded. I think this was one of my favorite scenes, where there might have been one later where like he saw them approaching and he thought that they were going to be dead, and then as he got in the vision, like they were holding the bridge, and he said it was like the most bravest thing that he had ever seen. So I just thought that was really interesting. But another scene that happens at this point is when Kaladin, like he yells for them to switch to side carry, and it blocks the arrows, and then the ones in front lose a volley, and Kaladin sucks in all the stormlight with the shield. What did you think about that? And do you think, like at this point, like do you think in Words of Radiance he's just like, this was probably more instinct than like skill? Do you think in Words of Radiance we'll get like a more like Seth-esque Kaladin? Do you think it'll happen that quick, or do you think Words of Radiance will be like a slow 1,000-page buildup of him like learning how to use these powers, maybe?
I think similar to the Force, that he has natural instincts, and his natural fight or flight instincts. He'll be able to protect himself and protect those that he cares about using his general emotion. But in order to fully learn the art and master the craft in the way that Seth does, he will need either a mentor or like some classic book that will give him the direction and the discipline to get to his full ability.
Yeah,
I
well,
think.
keep in mind,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, keep in mind, he only knows the first. The Redditors can help me out with this. I don't know, is like strength over weakness, life before death, journey over destination, because that's 3 lines. Does that count as 3 ideals, or is that only one ideal? Because I think there's multiple ideals in the Knights Radiant. So he could learn more ideals, and maybe the more ideals that, like, the words seem to give him power at one point. So I wonder if maybe the more ideals of the Knights Radiant that he knows, maybe the more he'll be able to hone the Stormlight, perhaps. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, it's a good thought. I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and now that he's with Dalinar, maybe like he'll be exposed to the Way of Kings, and that'll open his eyes to some things, perhaps. Um, there was also like when he did this, the Parshendi yelled "Neshua Kadal," and then like ran away. I wonder if that was just like them saying like "Holy shit!" like we should get out of here, or if Neshua Kadal is like a figure, right? Like maybe a figure within their culture, within their history that had power like that. That might be me, overreading the situation, but Neshua Kadal I did highlight in red in the outline just in case if it ever comes up again, maybe I'll remember. But then like the bridge is set, and because of what Kaladin did with the Stormlight, he's drained, and we get the flashback, the final flashback. Now, I felt like this flashback kind of like we could have guessed that it happened almost exactly like this. But still reading it happen, I think, was like the gut punch that Sanderson was maybe building up to, especially when he says that like he laid with his body, with Tien's body for hours. The only question I think I had was whether or not he saw Tien actually die when it happened, and this answered that. But even like it even reinforced like the Light Eyes hate and the decision that he had to make to save Dalinar. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the flashback. Did you think similarly, or did you have a different reaction there?
I mean, I think it was just it was for me. It really just it solidified what that story was, and kind of his cynicism towards the Alethi and whatnot, and kind of played well in contrast to I think how he's going to embrace Dalinar here, and it just kind of continued that hatred of the Light Eyes. That was kind of my read, and why I thought it was important.
Also, too, keep in mind when he was under Amaram after that, as early as chapter 1. Well, chapter 1, and then like chronologically what happened between chapter 1 and Tien dying. When he was a squad leader, what he was doing was he was getting all of those he was bribing everybody to get those like young boys so that they couldn't just be thrown onto the front line to slaughter, so that he could, so that he could try to save them. So that was like a pretty, heartbreaking realization as well. And, even though that we kind of knew that's why he did that, seeing how like Tien and the messenger boys were like thrown on the front line just to die, and the reason that he was kind of getting the brunt of the litter every time was because he wanted to try to train them and save them so that they wouldn't have a fate similar to his brothers was, like I said, pretty heartbreaking realization. But I mean, just, reinforces how strong of an arc that Kaladin has had throughout the series. And, in this chapter, still like ask him if he knows the words. And those are the 3 lines, strength before weakness, life before death, journey before destination.
Mm-hmm.
And as he recites them, like, I guess, I don't know if I think he must have just had like gotten a jolt of energy to get close enough to the Parshendi to absorb their stormlight, but he, explodes and jumps over the bridge to help hold that line.
Yeah.
And then as that goes into 68, right, Teft and the men watch him as he glows with stormlight and holds the bridge. Teft kind of organizes the guys in a defensive formation to hold it. And this is when Dalinar sees them holding it and realize that, it wasn't just fool's hope. Like, they actually have a chance right now. So he sends Adolin forward to support them. And that's when the Parshendi Shardbearer shows up. And I think Dalinar's reaction to this was like the reaction that everybody else had, right? Like, you see that the Bridgemen are holding the line. He sends Adolin forward. Like, all right, Dalinar's going to get out of this. And then the Shardbearer comes in, and he just continually screams, now you come, now you come. So I thought that was, I feel you, Dalinar. I feel you in that reaction.
Yeah. I thought it was... Yeah, I mean, it was pretty funny. It was like that, like, like that whispering, oh shit, like breaking that fourth wall under his breath.
Yeah. Yeah, now he does a pretty... I don't know. I thought this was a pretty A+, strategy he did here, where he climbs on top of a rock, or like an elevated rock, obviously, and he baits the Parshendi up there, knocks him down, and then cuts the rock off and crushes him. Now I had thought that he got the killing blow there. But I think what's explained is that his armor, he was so beat up through the battle that he wasn't able to capitalize on that move.
Did you get Yorick your four flashbacks here from his Dark Materials?
Against who?
When the two bears were fighting against each other, and Yorick used the elevation of the rock, or
yes, he jumps off the rock to get the sucker punch.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone in fantasy seems to acknowledge the true power of slightly higher ground.
Yeah, even Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like he's the poster boy for the high ground.
Yeah, that's true. That's true as well.
But even in fantasy series too. So that's for sure. Now, this like in this chapter, like Kaladin, he mentions within his inner monologue that he does have respect for the Parshendi, and that this is the type of opponent that he was looking forward to when he wanted to originally come to the Shattered Plains. Like he wanted to fight people that would send out their best warriors and not like their kids in their youth. Now at this point we get an update of the Bridge 4 casualty report. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take a sip of wine to Malop, Earless Jax, and Norm. Rest in peace.
Oof. Yeah, not the main crew, but
Earless Jax came up a couple of times. Malop came up a couple of times. Norm had no idea who he was, but yeah, man. I mean, rest in peace. Earless Jax I only remember because of Earless.
Okay.
I don't think he ever did anything substantial. Like maybe got like a bowl of stew once and it was mentioned. But otherwise, yeah, pretty forgettable. No one significant. Scar, Moash, Teft, Rock, Lopin, Dabbid. All the all-stars made it out, so that's good.
Yeah, we call that the Benioff and Weiss. When the side characters that no one cares about dies and all the other ones live.
Yeah, when you go
fear
north
of consequence.
Exactly. And then this is like, Kaladin crosses the bridge because the Kholin army is now, has established, a little bit of a foothold there. So many's dead and so many people are dead and the army's disorganized. Kaladin just starts promoting people. He knows what the hell is supposed to be going on, thankfully. And he finds Adolin, who, I can't abandon my father, yada, yada, yada. Kaladin decides to go after Dalinar so that Adolin can organize the retreat. So when he finds Dalinar, that's when the Parshendi Shardbearer is leaning on top of him, and he gives him like, "It is you. I have found you at last." line. And I don't know that I have found you at last. I'm curious if they know that Dalinar is getting visions, or if they know anything. But then again, it might just be the reputation that that him and Adolin have made for themselves by fighting them so heroically. Jumping across before their men do. He's maybe gained the reputation that the Parshendi, recognize and respect, and that maybe by killing him, it's like killing like a very honorable opponent, maybe. And maybe that's what the Parshendi had meant by there. So yeah, interesting. Now Kaladin stabs him in a place where there was a hole in his armor and disables him, but lets him live and gets Dalinar the hell out of there. And they all escape. Now at this point, I just wanted to hear where do you think? So that's the end of the Tower to Soul battle. Where would you rank that, you think, in fantasy battles that you've read in different series?
So it's definitely high up there. The only, and it did span a few chapters, which is key. The only holdback I have is the scale and the significance. This, it's a smaller scale battle. Obviously, it could have meant the end of Dalinar. We got some pretty incredible moments, but I think larger scale and higher risk battles are to come. And,
so you
and that's generally where
you mean in terms of the original stakes, before Sadeas betrayed him, you don't think there was it wasn't like storming the Black Gates of Mordor, right? It was just a, standard Tower Assault, more or less.
Right. I mean, I think it was important. I think they thought they were going to be able to break the back of the Parshendi with this. Mm-hmm. But it's not in that top echelon that's driven by the scale and scope of the battle.
Yeah. Now
Um,
the stakes were raised mid battle, but I definitely agree with what you're saying going into it.
yeah.
Like the stakes were raised once Sadius had retreated.
No, I agree. I agree. I still just think. I mean, I think ultimately, like, if they lose this battle, and Dalinar dies and Adolin dies, and the story can go on. Um, Whereas, like, there's certain battles in certain series where
It's now or never.
that it's now or never, and
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are like
yeah.
the
And I
top
agree. I
echelon,
think
the top 2%, and I think this is kind of falls into that next category.
yeah, and it's a 5 book series, right? So I imagine in Oathbringer and Rhythms of War, which isn't out yet, I'm sure that it'll be much more high, like higher staked, now or never type battles here. So I agree, but I thought the drama and like the anxiety levels that came from it was excellent and was up there with battles that would happen in like the third book of a trilogy, or like what I mean, or like the seventh book of A Song of Ice and Fire, whenever that comes out. You know what I mean? Like it had like once the battle started, it had that type of feel, even though it's probably going to seem small in terms of battles we see in the later books of the series, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's a good take.
Yeah. Um, Now at this point, 69 is the last chapter of part 4, and some really good emotional like standoffs here. You have Navani versus Sadius as the first like kind of standoff, and he tells her, I mean, that Dalinar is dead, and he saw him be cut down. He saw him himself fall in battle. Um, so he basically just lied the entire war camp, and then she creates a glyph. That's more like it's like a prayer. It's like their version of a prayer, and it,
Yeah,
it means justice, which is a hell of a word to use, like almost as if Navani knows, right, that Sadius, did something nefarious, and then immediately a messenger comes and tells him that Dalinar has lived. So I wonder if in words of radiance, like him lying and saying that he saw Dalinar die, has any implications at all. Um, we'll see though, because Dalinar at this point comes back. He tells Navani he's a changed man and that he won't let lying men control his life anymore.
mm-hmm.
Interesting quote there. And then we have this standoff where Dalinar and Sadius are standing close enough that only one another can hear each other. Behind Dalinar is his army. If I read it correctly, behind Sadius is his army. Like a very tense moment here.
Mm-hmm.
And Sadius basically says, Dalinar is infecting Elhokar, and that his own way of protecting Alethkar is to, make sure that Dalinar isn't in the picture anymore, so that he can have Elhokar's ear and kind of direct Elhokar and therefore Alethkar in the direction that he sees as best fit. And he was willing to go as far to, get rid of Dalinar to do that. He also said that the partnership proved that he could just split his armies in two and accomplish the same exact results. And I wonder if maybe he has a larger army that a lot of other high princes don't have, that maybe he's able to do that when they're not able to, so he can like steal, fame and glory and all those other things by just using his own army in two different kind of units, which is an interesting idea that he has there.
Right.
But then Dalinar gives a nice quote. He says, "You show me that I'm still a threat." And I think that's all he really needed. That's all he had so many doubts throughout the book here. And Sadius, he thought he was going to get rid of him, but he did the opposite and kind of let him know that he was still a force to be reckoned with, right?
Yeah, no, and I think this is Sadius definitely like looked over and kind of shit his pants when he saw that Dalinar was still alive, because that meant he's
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. And then we get the Bridgeman negotiation, and Sadius is basically saying, you're not going to be able to buy them from me because I don't really want or need your money. And Dalinar summons his shard blade, and like I think you think for a second there that he might, shit might hit the fan, and he decides to trade that for all of the Bridgemen, not just Bridge 4, but every single Bridgeman in Sadius's camp. and he accepts.
Yeah.
Now, this is like a big, huge twist here, and I was waiting for the chapter by chapter description to ask you about. Kaladin asked him why, and he says that a life is priceless, and so is a shard blade. So if I can save 1,000 lives with one shard blade, it's a trade I win. Now, this is what I was saying earlier when I said he gave up the blade. He said he was going to give the armor to Renarin. Can Dalinar be like a version of the Blackthorn just by being playing general behind the scenes? You think, are we going to see like a real crazy version of Dalinar that we haven't seen yet, or maybe do you think he just wins another plate and blade?
I don't know. I think he's stepping behind to pull the strings. I mean, I think
and Adolin will be like his general.
That close to death. That's just my take.
Yeah, no, I get that, especially when he was feeling like nauseous on the battlefield at times, and it seemed like, the back cover of the book. What does it say? It says, and the prince, whose eyes open to the ancient past as his thirst for battle wanes. So it seems like he's willing to, pull the strings and let Adolin be the general, more or less, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The military chief, like, of everything. He's going to have full control over all their military operations.
Right, exactly. So that's a good point, and that brings us to the end of the chapter here now. And Dalinar, who he controls Elhokar's guards, and they're loyal to him. He tells them not to come in the room, and he just goes in the room and proceeds to beat the shit out of Elhokar. Just like,
it was awesome.
Beats him to a pulp. This is where we find out that Elhokar cut the strap, and Dalinar basically just beats the piss out of him to let him know that, say, listen, if I wanted to kill you, I could kill you right now, and that by me beating you into an inch of your life and letting you live tells you that I am not your enemy, which is definitely the most backwards way to tell somebody that. But Elhokar kind of forced his hand by making him do that, right? There might not have been much else that Elhokar would have believed if he didn't, go to such extremes. So this, I thought it was like, once you find out that Elhokar cut the strap, it makes what Dalinar does extremely satisfying. Just because that was like the drama of the whole book, right? Ever since that chapter with the Chasm Fiend hunt, that was really like where a lot of the drama was coming from and caused a lot of the issues between Dalinar and Sadeas. And that, at this point he tells him that, you're going to name me High Prince of War. We're going to finally unite the Alethi. I'm going to use them strategically, to work with one another, and we're going to win the war and go back to Alethkar. Kholinar, I guess I should say, maybe. And as he leaves, he tells Elhokar that he is courting Navani. So, Dalinar is back on his bullshit, there's, put it simply.
And I'm ready for it. I'm here for it.
And I'm ready for it. So that was, part 4, especially the last, I guess it was 65 to 69. The last, 4 or 5 chapters was really quite ludicrous, man. It was it was a ride. Yeah. And I loved every second of it. Now, Part 5 was I thought Part 5 was a nice wind down because each chapter was pretty short and something kind of substantial happened in each one. Let's just run through it before we get to Reddit questions and such. The 70 was Shallan. She's putting the pieces together of what happened, and this is what I was trying to do in the chapter when Kabzil tried to poison her, but I didn't take into account, and obviously I couldn't have. That Yasna was able to just soul cast with her hand. That it was as simple as that. And she realizes that she was soul casting the food as it got to her, and the exact details of what happened are still a little foggy. But she put it together that whatever happened, Yasna was trying to soul cast the poison into not poison, obviously. Right. Now. She to kind of prove to her that she knows this and knows why she was able to do this, she goes back to Shadesmore, which is where she was when she soul casted accidentally that first time. And they say that in order for you to have access to whatever this place is, you need to tell us a truth. And the truth is that she admits to killing her father, which I feel like I need to go back and like reread every Shallan chapter now because like I don't I'm so I just forget what she said like the relationship with her father was, to the point where like her killing her father, like why would she do that? Why would she kill her father only to then, is she trying to save her family and steal this? Was she trying to steal the Soulcaster because she felt guilty about killing her father? Did the father deserve it? Like I just have a ton of questions.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean this was out of nowhere. Obviously, there's more information to come.
Yeah.
I think my read on the situation is that she saw that he was basically, losing himself to the creditors and to the debtors and putting them above their family and their kingdom, and she saw it as a necessary sacrifice.
Yeah, maybe. And she's done. There was two parts of the book where she mentioned 10 heartbeats, which we know is the Shardblade thing. I'm curious to know, did she mention if her father has one, and if so, did she kill him and take it?
Mm.
And if she did do that, do the brothers know? I'm gonna need. I think I might go back. I found, and it helped me with the outline a couple of times on the wiki page. There's some chapter by chapter summaries that was helpful for putting together the outline. I might just go back and reread any Shallan chapters, the recap, and just see if there was any further information about the father and the family in general. But that was just a thought.
Okay.
Now, there was also an epilogue with the brother, Balat, that I wanted to go back and read because I don't think there was anything substantial in there. But now that we know Shallan did that, I'm curious if maybe anything was in one of those epilogues. But she starts to drown somehow in the Shadesmar, and Yasna pulls her out and basically tells her that you're a fool for doing that with a dim sphere, which makes me think that in order to soulcast without a soulcaster, you still need spheres and Stormlight. Like it still works on that principle. If I'm reading correctly. So similar to how Kaladin and Seth used the Stormlight to use their abilities, whatever abilities Shallan and Yasna have now unlocked, you still need the Stormlight sphere connection. So Shallan asks Yasna to help with her work in earnest and promises to never lie or steal again. And she accepts and says, here, these are my notes on the Voidbringers. This is what we're studying. Now, my question for you, Tom, is so do you remember the epilogue, not the epilogue, the flashback with Valinor when he's talking to King Nahodin? And King Nahodin's mentioning like the Surge Binders and he's looking down on Kholinar and it's been ravaged by the desolation. You know the flashback I'm speaking of?
I do.
So he mentions the Surge Binders, and that do you think Surge Binders are people that can soulcast without a soulcaster?
Could be. Yeah, that seems like that seems like it could be the case. I think that's a pretty good pickup. Because we know it's either that or the Surge Binders. I don't know, maybe not though.
Because I think Navani mentioned that people they knew that they could do the soul casting stuff back then, but when Valinor goes back, he doesn't see any Fabrials, he doesn't see any technology that would really hint at them being able to do that. So what I'm curious is if maybe the Surge Binders are maybe they're an order of Knights Radiant that can do Seth Kaladin type abilities, or they're like Shallan and Yasna, and it's what a Surge Binder is someone that can soul cast without a soul caster. So that's where I'm placing my bets at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, because I guess the other one I was considering was if it was a Seth or a down or a Kaladin who can suck into Stormlight, but that doesn't really seem.
That's a good guess.
Doesn't really seem like binding though. So I think you're probably closer.
Yeah, but the surge, the word surge makes me think of Kaladin and Seth, but the binders makes me think of Shallan and Yasna, if that makes sense. Now, Yasna also tells us that the symbol head creatures are a version of Spren, which is I had so many questions about Spren in the beginning, and then I was kind of just okay, they're whenever they're like energy, right? There's death spren when you die, there's joy spren when you're happy, there's whatever, like Spren matched like emotions and feelings almost. And now I just have no idea because you have Honor Spren and Bind Spren and whatever Symbol-Head Spren. I feel like this, like I thought I came to a conclusion on Spren, and now I just have a million more questions that I'm hoping future Shallan and Yasna chapters might answer. I think because they're like the since Shallan and Yasna are the more academic characters that are POVs. I'm thinking maybe if we learn more about Spran, it might come from that.
Yeah, the Spren to me, it seems like they're again another Star Wars reference here, but it feels like it's like Force-esque, but like separated into like individual scientific categories. Where like the Force is kind of like the yada yada version of the Spren, where the Spren's more detailed and thorough and thought out and specific about what these kind of these natural forces that flow in and out of human life, what they all represent, and like what is exactly doing these things, as opposed to like accepting no as an answer.
No, I'm with that. Now let's go to 71. This was the Seth chapter where he finds Taravangian. Now, do you think Taravangian had anything to do with Gavilar's death? He didn't. Must. I thought about it for a second, but then I was thinking that must have not been who ordered Seth to do that, because he would have just done everything at once then. I don't think he knew about Seth. I think he learned about Seth from Gavilar's death. So I just wanted to ask you if that made sense to you, or if you had different thoughts on if there was a Taravangian and Gavilar hit connection.
I guess. I mean, I think it's. Man, I don't know. I think it has to be more so the latter, right? That he remembers this and that he learned about this, and
yeah, that's what I think is more logical. But I did think it was worth the thought experiment just to think about. You know what I mean? If maybe he could have been related. But I think you're right. It's more likely that he learned about an assassin of Seth's capabilities from Gavilar's death, and then put a plan in motion henceforth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Now we learn about, he wanted to wipe out like the old guard of kings to prepare a left guard for what's to come. Probably a little bit too late. Then he takes Seth to the hospitals, and we get that reveal. And I just feel like that was the hospital thing was like, there's the Shallan chapter was a great horror chapter, and I feel like there was a great horror chapter with these hospitals, but the way he revealed it was still satisfying. With Seth almost, you know what I mean? Like it makes him kind of hate himself and what he does even more.
Right.
Which I, didn't really know was possible because of how much he had already hated himself. Mm-hmm. So any Seth POV in Words of Radiance and Oathbringer is definitely going to be interesting to see just how he copes and continues to cope with who he is and what he does, right?
Yeah, he's the reluctant, reluctant villain here, right? It would be interesting to see if the Desolation starts. Excuse me. The Desolation starts. He gets somehow Dalinar gets his Oathstone, and then we just have Dalinar and
just
Seth
a dream
and Kaladin just against this Odin and this greater power.
I think Dalinar, Adolin, Zeth, and Kaladin on just like four. Like, how many do we think that they can take on by themselves? I'm willing to say like 5,000. 4 on 5,000. It might be doable.
I think it could be above that, honestly.
Yeah, I think Dalinar himself caught like 500 plus bodies in this book alone.
Yeah, the kill to page ratio was out of control.
Yeah, it was out of control. So, I'm curious, we've been talking about Zeth verse people, but if Dalinar gets the Oathstone, I mean, we're really putting together the Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, USA Olympic team.
Yeah, we're cooking. We're cooking at that point.
I have a comment from a Redditor that made some NBA to
I did see this, and I was a little disparaging, but go ahead.
We'll talk about it and give our thoughts. But chapter 72 was Yasna tells Shallan that she finds, historical realities and supernatural myths is basically how I read it. And she continues that humanity had never defeated the Voidbringers, they enslaved them, and that they're the Parshmen. So we already talked about this a little bit, and we both mentioned that. I don't think we're completely satisfied with that answer. There's an answer there. Like the Parshmen were definitely on the side of the Voidbringers and fought against humanity and desolations. I just wonder what the relationship was, because it doesn't seem like they're evil to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I know we already kind of hit on this. They don't seem evil to me either. I don't know if perhaps like there's something lying dormant within them and they can be controlled by this mysterious overlord.
Yeah.
And that's when they become the Voidbringers, because it doesn't seem like at this point it just seems like a misunderstanding of culture that would put them as evil, not really their actions.
Yeah, and maybe they were just at odds with humanity in general, so like it made sense for them to join with the Voidbringers because they were just like, maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm curious, and I also don't know if there was Parshmen in some of these further back flashbacks that Dalinar had. Like, did Parshmen exist back then? I'd have to, I don't remember seeing any in his flashbacks. So like, when exactly Parshmen became a thing is an interesting question that I'd like to see answered eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But let's carry on here now. Chapter 73, Dalinar asks Kaladin and for Bridge 4 to become his new honor guard, and that he wants Kaladin to train the rest of the Bridgemen as spearmen as well, and that he'll then have a whole company of Bridgemen spearmen. So I think a company, what did he say they had left? Maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 Bridgemen? Was that right? I think 1,000?
Yeah.
Somewhere, I think the number was around 1,000. If you're a commenter, feel free to give us the exact number. I'm sure we could find it quickly if we just went back and skimmed, but that's interesting. I'm curious to see if that becomes like, I'm sure like Bridge 4 and the Honor Guard, I bet will be like the cream of the crop. But I wonder if if you give Kaladin an entire company of spearmen that he's trained and have gone through the experiences that they have to be like more, elite soldiers, the damage that he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, it might be like the Roshar Rangers or like the Roshar Seals.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be a really special group of badass motherfuckers.
Yeah, the elite of the elite.
That's right.
So Dalinar makes him a captain, and I think the deal is that like he can't give any other officer orders, but an officer can't give him orders. If that makes, I think that's what the deal was.
I thought it was like he's the highest possible like cast for like a dark eyes. And so basically, like there are light eye casts like still under him, but he just has to be like you were saying, be careful.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought of a question to ask at the end, so I'm going to write that down real quick, and then let me go back to where we're at, chapter 73. So yeah, he makes him the captain, and then he goes back to Bridge 4, and they're having a retro, feel good night. Rock's cooking up the stew. They're sitting around the fire, and they want to help him, like, A, figure out what abilities he has, and B, measure them so he knows like how far he can go with certain abilities, and really just kind of narrow down in a more specific sense what he is capable of and what his powers, what the limits to his powers are. Sigil, I think, seems particularly gung-ho about helping him. I wonder, since he's a world singer, if he's able to, if he knows maybe a little bit more about these abilities and people like Kaladin in the past, and stories that have been brought down. It seems like some of them want to learn. I think Kaladin was pretty transparent about him not being sure if it's a teachable ability. But he ends his final chapter of the book being basically being like depressed and having PTSD for the entire book, being pretty content here in the final chapter of it. So I think, great ending to his arc for the final book. And I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of dilemmas and character building in books to come. But at the end of the Way of Kings, I think Kaladin is in a place that we can all kind of be happy for him, right?
Yeah. Now we need a love interest. We need some honor guard, badassery.
Do you think it's Shallan? Do you think the love interest is Shallan?
Could be. That devilish red hair will get him in. Like,
Yeah, you never know. You never know. I also wanted to ask you, and this is maybe more so myself. Do you think Kaladin will ever get to go home?
no,
No. Do you think we ever see Liren and his mother again?
I don't think so. I think no. I think we're beyond that.
Yeah, that's kind of heartbreaking. I think for his arc, like I would love for him to just be able to talk to his father again one more time. You know what I mean? I would love to see what that conversation is like. Like if he says sorry, like, I don't know. I think that could be a really, pulling on the heartstrings moment.
Or if his father knew at any point that he was able to, like as a baby, if he was, ingesting Stormlight and doing like Jack
Yeah,
Dad from Incredibles.
I don't know. Now, if you like, there was a flashback to when Kaladin had the POV flashback to like what happened in chapter 1. He did mention a spren around him, which I think was Syl, but I don't remember any mentions of that to when he was younger in his like home village with a spren around him. But maybe like who knows how long Syl has been with him.
Mm.
So definitely that's a good point. Now in 74, Shallan and Yasna say that they're going to head to the Shattered Plains and investigate further. And this is I don't really know what to think about this yet. I think Shallan is going to be like a key figure in one of these other books, and we learn a lot more about her. I think probably I wonder if she'll have flashbacks like Kaladin did. She said, Yasna brings up the Ghost Bloods, which is basically like a secret society. Kabzal was a part of them. They're also looking for information on the Voidbringers. The Ghost Bloods are the one that wanted Yasna dead. And they have a symbol, and Yasna shows Shallan the symbol, and she realizes that this is the same symbol that her father and her father's steward had tattooed on them. So seems like Shallan's father was probably evil in some way. Which makes his like debt and other questionable decisions even more questionable.
So what is like the objective of the Ghost Bloods?
Yeah, I don't know. So that's a great question. Like, for all we know, right? They could, I guess, be looking for information on the Voidbringers to save humanity, kind of like how Taravanging is doing. Like, he's trying to save humanity in an ass backwards way, but like he's trying to save humanity. Maybe the Ghostbloods have a similar objective, or they're just like, we want the desolation to come and kill everybody.
Yeah, or is it something where they want to use they want to obtain all the Fabrials and all the whatever Shallan or not whatever, Shallan and Yasna are and their powers, whether they want to kind of hone all that to rise to power.
Yeah, especially it's interesting because they wanted to. It seemed like originally Yasna thought that Kabzal wanted to steal the Soulcaster, and I wonder if she still thinks that, you know what I mean? If maybe if that was before she realized the Ghost Blood connection, or if they maybe knew that perhaps she was like, do you think she used she obviously used the fake Soulcasters as as a reason why she had these abilities, right? So that people would not look at her and question things. But I think this is setting up a plot line in the next book. Basically, I think the Ghost Bloods will learn a lot more about. This is kind of just setting the groundwork, and we'll find out a ton more in Words of Radiance. Is my guess.
Yeah, and does anyone have a Ghost Bloods tattoo?
Oh, I don't know about all that, man. I think I would get Bridge 4 tatted on me before the secret society that tried to assassinate Yasna. That would be a strange choice. But if you have a Ghost Blood tattoo, let me know. Or if you have an artwork of what the tattoo looks like, let's share that with us. And I was also thinking, are the Ghost Bloods related to Thydakar and Viserys? That's who, when Gavilar was killed, that's like who he thought was behind it. And Seth was like, no, don't know who they are. So maybe they're Ghost Blood related. Something just something to remember as we start Words of Radiance.
Are there ghost crypts?
What was that?
Are there ghost crypts?
Oh my god, that's a great question. Yeah, I would love to know if there was an inner ghost battle happening there. Now, 75 the ending of this chapter. I thought I was like, okay, we're getting deep here. Dalinar has another vision.
Mhm.
He realizes that the division never told him to trust Sadius. He kind of just interpreted that way. And the visions. So this is how I justified it in my head. They're like a pre-recorded message,
Right.
you send a message in a bottle, or like you send a message into space. Um, whoever sent them without any knowledge of who Dalinar is, and that like it's not like a live message. It's simply relaying information. So Dalinar realizes that now, and what he sees is like a huge storm swallows, I think, Kolinar. Um, and the voice tells Dalinar that the Knights Radiant must be reformed. Maybe that's where Dalinar comes in, right? Or Kaladin comes in, I mean. And the voice announces that he is the Almighty, that he is basically God, and that he is dead, and that
Yeah.
Odium killed him. So reaction to that in general, like how do you, how do if God is telling you that he's dead and that the person that killed him is coming to conquer the world, like what do you, what is your reaction to that?
I mean, shit's about to pop off. The only type of a team that could stop a force like that would be a Seth, Dalinar, Kaladin triumvirate.
Oh, dude, if we can get a trio, if we can get that trio, that'll be one hell of a thing. What I'm really curious to find out, and you don't have to share this with me, and I can kind of find out in real time. But like, what the hell does Odium look like? You know what I mean? Does he look like a regular guy? Is he like a monster?
I feel like someone posted a sketch of Kaladin, or no, of Dalinar in front of like a huge white face, like a moon like face. That's kind of my vibe, like a giant like moon.
Oh, so that was when Kaladin was in the high storm and he saw that face in the sky, and I definitely didn't know if it was good or evil. If it was evil, it might have been Odium's face for sure.
Yeah, I think it was Odium.
And Odium was like, "I know that you're out there." That's foreboding. Um, Now, I also wanted to ask you: is what we saw like a super high storm? Like when the desolation comes, do you think the high storms like get amplified? I think Navani said something about the high storms getting worse or maybe sporadic.
Yeah, I think they're like more frequent and more powerful the closer and closer.
Yeah, so it seems like they're going to amp up, and that I wonder if she mentioned like different fabrials they can make. I wonder if they'll be able to create something where you can like live in a high storm. If that I don't that might not be possible, but you know, if we're getting steampunkish, I want a high storm survival suit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So then we get the epilogue here, and this is, we mentioned, we already went over this, but Wick gets a front row seat to the night that the world has changed, I think was more or less the words that the book used. And Telenor stumbles into the courtyard, shardblade in hand. He's worn and, shabby and scruffy from damnation. And he says that the desolation is coming and collapses. And that's when Wit has the, timeliness is what men value most, and Telenor has arrived too late. It also mentioned an honor blade here. So an honor blade, I think, is what a herald has. Is an honor blade different than a shard blade? Do you think?
I think an honor blade is like a super blade.
Like a shard blade, if it was enhanced.
Yeah, or like yeah, basically.
Or like that, or it's probably like there's only 10 of them for each herald, and that there, you can't like remake that. Like shard blade is like a Walmart version of an honor blade.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I had similar thoughts. So we already gave our instant reactions. How about we do some of the Reddit comment and user submitted questions, and then we just talk about, just for a minute or two, like, what we expect to happen in Words of Radiance, and we'll talk about our schedule with Warbreaker next too. So you ready for some user submitted questions?
Let's do it.
So Deluge, who, you've commented throughout, this is the... So he said, you guys mentioned during doing a Stormlight to NBA players comparison. Here's a thread someone did with a few Stormlight and Mistborn characters. I didn't see anything spoilery, but in case you wanted to click the link, here's what he came up with. I feel like we could write up our own and post it or do it on a pod, but I like just Kaladin as Kobe, Dalinar as Shaq, and Adolin as D Wade. What do you think about that? I don't agree. I don't think I agree with Adolin. But I agree with Dalinar. Like, Dalinar being Shaq is like, I see that.
Yeah, but he's still dominant. I don't know. I feel like Dalinar's more like a LeBron. He's got 18-year career at this point, or
His
like
age
Abdul-Jabbar. It's more about the longevity that really makes him that top 5.
I think a Kareem LeBron comp. I like that. I feel like Adolin would be more like, not necessarily a Wade. Like, think about Yeah, I'm sure when the Way of Kings came out, he was probably Wade. But like in my time frame, I'm seeing more like Devin Booker, um, Ben Simmons, the new guard. You know what I mean?
Really hasn't done it for himself, but thinks he's on the precipice of success.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And Cowden is Kobe. I mean, listen, if we go back through Kobe's career, like rookie year against the Jazz, he airballs all them shots to end the season, and then he comes back a killer. I don't know. I see the Cowden Kobe comparison.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's too good of a teammate.
Too good of a teammate. Interesting.
I don't think
Interesting.
Kobe's the nicest to his rest in peace. And I think he kind of came to grips with this a lot after he retired.
Really? So do you have who do you think is a player that we could maybe apply to him that checks off, the leadership boxes as well, you think? Do you think like a Tim Duncan in
No,
a roundabout way?
I think he's too explosive and too interesting to be Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan, well, yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Maybe a.
It's a tough one. Like maybe LeBron.
It might be LeBron. I would say either LeBron or Magic is the other one that's kind of coming to my mind.
Yeah, Magic's post playing career has like ruined him for me.
Okay.
But I see what you're saying. If I just ignore his like public appearances in the past 5 years.
He basically play like Kaladin plays to. He's not only fantastic himself, but
We'll
like
play center if
best
Kareem
version of
Abdul-Jabbar
himself
is
to
what
make
you're saying.
the others around him better.
Okay, I respect that. Now the other ones in the thing were a lot of Mistborn characters. So eventually we might do Mistborn, and we can do like a larger scale one. But that's always a fun exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Zillion 2010, appreciate you commenting throughout the read along here, man. Couple questions. One, having finished the book now, what do you think Avalar meant by telling Dalinar to find the most important words a man can say? Now, just, when I first read the prologue, I thought this was going to be "I'm sorry." I thought the most important words a man can say is going to be "I'm sorry," but that doesn't seem to be the case as of this point. I'm not sure. Like, I still like this is such a mystery to me. Is this something that is answered? Do you think in the series, or do you think it was more? Do you think it was like the book, like the codes, the most important words a man can say? I don't know. It is such a profound question, and it seems like something that Dalinar would know the answer to. But what do you think about it? Did you have any like concrete guesses? For me, I just kind of chase myself in circles thinking about it.
Yeah, because it feels like the coming to Jesus moment for Dalinar here was giving up the shard blade to save all the men. Not that he was a bad person before that, but that felt like the most important moment in the book. So I don't know. I don't think like perhaps it's related to the the Way of Kings and those kind of tomes, but I don't know if I have anything solid either.
Yeah, I hope it comes up again in either the Words of Radiance or Oathbreaker, even as far as Rhythm of War, because I think that was a fascinating line by Gavilar, and it's really his only moment in the series, right? It's his only significant line in the series, right? Tell my brother to find the most important words a man can say. And I am curious of what the answer to that question is. So I appreciate that question, Zillion. Now the next one he had was. Some people on the forum think Yasna was out of character for giving Shallan so quickly for stealing the Soulcaster. What were your thoughts on that? I definitely agree that she forgave her quickly. Whether or not it was out of character, I don't know. I feel like Yasna is a mysterious character that I don't really, I'm not sure if I have her figured out to say that anything she does is out of character, if that makes sense.
I think she's a little stubborn, and I could see it being out of character for her to forgive her that quickly. But I also feel like once she realized that Shallan was like of the same ilk as her, whatever we're going to call that, I think it was kind of like okay, like I think we need
Yeah.
to team up here.
That once she did the Shadesmore thing, I think it kind of Yasna's like, listen, there's nobody else I know that can do what I do. So if she's able to do it, I need to either like I need to either trust her or I need to use her. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wonder if Yasna is completely loyal to her, if she's just like, listen, if you can do what I can do and you want to help me, like I'll help you, but I'll let you help me, but I'm gonna keep an eye on you. So I would have to see how Yasna interacts with Shallan in Words of Radiance to maybe answer that question. But definitely a good like food for thought, just to think about.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 100, how much do you wish for Sadious's death? I mean, it's I would break the scale, but I'm definitely at 100. I would also. It seems like the worst characters in these series that you hate do not get the ending that is justified. Like, not that is justified, right? Like, usually it's in a poetic and plot appropriate way, but like you want like the worst for the worst characters, and you're not always rewarded. So I'm curious to see what becomes of Sadius. Like, is he a villain that's going to last throughout the books, or is this, does Dalinar, make quick work of him within a book or two? How would you answer that question?
I think he's a good chess piece on the board. I think he's an interesting character. So I don't know if I want him to die immediately. I mean, I think
Yeah,
ultimately he definitely pisses me off, but I think he's a useful character.
yeah, and he adds he's the if Dalinar is Larry Bird, he's his Magic Johnson. They got great beef.
Right.
And then Zillion says, congratulations on another correct guess. One of you, I'm pretty sure, had guessed the Parchment were going to be revealed as the Voidbringers. Yes, I appreciate you remembering that. I wish that we would have maybe dug our heels a little bit deeper in that theory, because I think as the book went on, we thought that we were not close to that on that guess. And then it ended up circling back, and we ended up being right. So, certainly an interesting ride with our theories and our guesses in this book. And then his question is, with all the major events, Sadio's betrayal, Shallan revealing she killed her father, Taravangian's secret hospital, and the other ones included, which was the most surprising moment to you? What moment were you most, blown away by that you didn't see coming? For me, there's like 3 that I can't decide on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. Ooh, what do I want to go with? I'm gonna go with not the Shallan one. That was surprising.
I think it's there. Well, for me, it's Shallan,
Okay.
the hospital, Dalinar giving up the Shard Blade, and the Talonol coming back. Like, I know that's 4 of them, and it's really a cop out, but they were all just so equally surprising. Excuse me, equally surprising to me. It was like one after the other. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to pick one that stands out above the rest because they were all so significant, I thought. Sadio's betrayal, I think I would have to say, was the least surprising, just because he was kind of a shithead the whole time, and I wasn't sure if he was being genuine. I didn't expect him to go that far, but even so, I had reservations about him.
Okay. I think. Oh man, I think the craziest shit was Tarabangian and Seth and the secret.
Yeah, dude, that hospital was nuts, man. I couldn't believe it.
It wasn't even the hospital. It was just like this guy. Like there was
Yeah,
no indication that. I also like honestly the Sadeas one surprised me just because I feel like I had dug my heels in.
you were defending him last week. You were.
I know, and now I feel like where's my judge of character?
Yeah. Well, this is a learning experience as we move forward in the series. Maybe we can find out, we can eye out betrayals before they happen because of this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Possibly.
we also didn't see Capsule coming at all. We thought he was just an asshole. So maybe we're not the best judge of character. Maybe we're not the best judge of character in Rashar. Now, This was pretty crazy. Reddit guy told me to look up. Reddit guy 628 told me to reread epigraphs 4 and 63. So I go back and I'll read them for you. Chapter 4. I'm dying, aren't I? Healer, why do you take my blood? Who is that beside you with his head of lines? I can see a distant sun shining in the black sky. So, healer, why do you take my blood? Like, this is a patient in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the only question I have with this one is who the hell has the head of lines? Is it Seth? Is it the person that Seth and Taravanian walk in on when he dies? But I don't think Seth has a head of lines. I just know that he's Shin and has big eyes, but nothing about lines on his head. And then the one from 63 is, I wish to sleep. I know now why you do what you do, and I hate you for it. I will not speak of the truths I seek, of the truths I see, I mean. So that's another one. That's somebody in the hospital, and he's saying that I know why you're taking my blood, and I will not speak the truths that I see on the other side to you. Does that add up for you, or am I crazy?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Maybe it's like they're halfway between life and death, and there's also, I think, the possibility with all of these that, like, the reason they're studying these is they're completely disassociated with reality. So who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm still sticking to my guns until substantially proven otherwise that this was Tylenol. But it does seem like the other popular theory would be that they're just seeing something between life and death that hints at the desolation, maybe. Right. So let me ask you this: favorite scene of the book, and I'll let you have a cop out and like do it in like general terms, whether it was like a series of chapters or like a specific like point of an arc.
Okay, so the obvious ones were what we just read. So
Right. So anything earlier than that, like I don't know. I still think that the prologue and the prelude were so good that it made me want to finish. Like the prelude and the prologue were so captivating and it posed so many questions that I wanted to know the answers to, that it made me, like it made the rest of the book easier to read, if that makes sense. So I would say even like those first, like the prelude and the prologue, I thought were great scenes. And they might be two of my favorite chapters of the entire book. The finishing to part 4 and then into part 5 was obviously great. The Shallan chapter with the symbol heads chasing her while she was drawing them, that's probably in my top 5. That's just to name a few for me.
Yeah, so 2 that I have. Okay, so those are all really good ones. 2 that I have that jump out. One is Dalinar's vision when he goes back to the I forget the name of the place, but basically like the kingdom, and then all the Knights of Radiance like lay down their swords, and all the guys and all the regular people just start killing each other, and they kind of like abandon them, and it's like, why did you abandon us? I just like, for some reason, like I really enjoy flashbacks and flashback scenes in general.
I thought the flashbacks were fantastic as well. Yeah, what ones did you like better, you think? Did you like Dalinar's visions chapters better, or did you like Kaladin's flashback chapters better?
I like Dalinar's visions better.
Yeah, I thought they were both good, but I liked like the lore and the history of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these questions are from Massier as well. He, Massier commented a lot on each episode. He said that whether it's Warbreaker or Words of Radiance next, that they're in. So we appreciate that. We look forward to you listening to the next series of pods here. A couple more questions. So, favorite character? Mine, I think mine is easy. I think it's probably a lot of people's favorite character, but definitely mine would be Kaladin, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think Kaladin's like the Jon Snow here. God, I really like just Olive Bridge. I'll give it to Olive Bridge 4. Like Tat and Rod.
4, I agree.
I love the discourse between them.
Yeah, the camaraderie, everything about Bridge 4 I thought was pretty fantastic. Obviously, I did really like Dalinar he's not, I think, the most relatable character compared to Kaladin. but a lot of interesting things about him. Adeline Adeline, I think, is in the beginning and at some points in the story seems a little bit too, a little bit too posh and a little bit too privileged. But overall, I think Adeline really came around at the end, and especially once he started buying into his father, and I don't know, Adeline grew a lot on me as the book went on, so I'll give him that. I also, other than Kaladin, though, I think Yasna may be one of my favorite characters, just because she seems like the only one in the story who's like actively trying to get shit done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like she seems to, other than Taravangian, who's doing it in like a very messed up way, like she's like trying to find answers and information and seems like proactive in, saving the world. So I'm going to throw Yasna in the mix.
Yeah, I like. Okay, so the three. So yeah, so Kaladin, and then the Teft Rock Lopin trio.
They're a package deal.
They're a package deal, and then I also kind of like Navani. I feel like she's gonna have a bigger role to play.
Yeah, Navani was cool towards the end too. Once we started to learn more about her, I do want to say with Shallan, I disliked her at first, but I think as we read, as we go through more of the story, Shallan I think is becoming a more captivating character to me that I think I'm going to grow to like a lot more. If that makes sense. I just had like so many reservations about her arc and like the point of her in the story. Whereas as the book went on, it like became more apparent why she's important, and the mysteries behind her and how she was written became more clear to me too. Like how she like hides things within her POV that I thought was really fascinating. It just makes her chapters really interesting because like she's not truthful to the reader. Not that she isn't truthful, but she isn't just like fully transparent about everything, which I thought is a really interesting way to write a character. So Shallan is rising up my power rankings, but Kaladin and Yasna are probably at the top for me. And then just like if you had to pick just one or two things in Words of Radiance that you're like dying to find out the most, like what are one or two things that you want to find out next?
I want to deeper dive into Parshendi culture. I would enjoy honestly like a POV from a Parshendi.
I would love. Yeah, I think I have so many questions about the Parshendi that's easily up there on my list as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that end.
So for me, it's that and finding out now that Talonol is back. Like, are they going to try to imprison him? And if they try to imprison him, is he just going to be like, "Dude, I'm a herald. Like, you can't imprison me"? Like, is he just going to bust out like and be like, "You have to listen to me"?
I don't know.
I'm just curious to see how the like humanity Talonol relationship coexist and how Talonol reacts to his other herald brethren abandoning him. So that's probably the two things I'm dying to find out the most: Parshendi and Talonol.
The other one for me is the Kaladin training montage as he learns to use his powers. And
yeah, for sure. So I read the Ads Arcanum at the end there, and it gives a nice little detailed description of Fabrials as well as the three forms of lashing that I think we basically knew the gist of how everything works from the Seth chapters, and how like gravity has gravity and body weight have a lot to do with the lashings. But just it was interesting there, and I like how it was written from like the perspective of an in-universe character. But I mean, phenomenal book. The ending was the payoff was great, right? I'm dying to start Words of Radiance. But we're going to, journey before destination, as the ideal says, as a lot of our commenters and fans of the Stormlight Archive have told us.
Yes.
We're going to do Warbreaker. And I know that is very little to do with, the story that we've been reading, but it'll give us some background information that when we start Words of Radiance, I think we'll just, it'll be nice just to have that information. And when we notice, any crossovers or cameos, we'll be able to call it out on the podcast. Hopefully, if we miss it, that might be embarrassing.
Yes.
But so we're going to do Warbreaker, and then we're going to do Words of Radiance, and then we're going to do Edge Dancer, Oathbringer, and then hopefully around the time Rhythm of War comes out, maybe we'll be close and we can do Rhythms of War, with everybody else, which I think would be really fun. Now, what most people said was prologue to chapter 15 should be what we should do. Both both submissions we had from Zapsia and Lesser. Really appreciate you taking the time to, to give us your thoughts on what the breakdown should be. You both said prologue to chapter 15 as the first episode, so we're going to go with that. And that's, 133 to 166 pages, depending on the edition you have. And we're going to do it in 4 episodes. So that way, in a month, we'll be able to start Words of Radiance and continue with the Stormlight Archive. So, yeah, any closing thoughts on Warbreaker or any closing thoughts on The Way of Kings, Tom? I think this is our longest episode we have ever done.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, boy. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we landed here. I'm definitely enjoying this.
Yeah,
probably the most of the content we've covered. And yeah, excited and I've really enjoyed going through it with you guys, and I'm excited to keep this thing going.
Yeah, I also just wanted to shout out and thank anybody who listened to our His Dark Materials series and stuck around with us while we read The Way of Kings. His Dark Materials was really like our guinea pig project as a read-along podcast. It wasn't always supposed to be a read-along podcast. So, our evolving into that and using His Dark Materials is kind of like our first project to do as we, honed our skills and hopefully are getting better, as we continue to make the podcast. Just really, appreciate for liking us enough to listen to us do His Dark Materials. I know that was a series that was probably near and dear to you, and then sticking with us through, the Stormlight Archive now as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to shout you guys out. If there's anything else that you guys think that is The Way of Kings specific that you want us to talk about, feel free to comment on the Reddit post. I'd be more than happy to, have some back and forth with you guys. If there's any artwork, like fan made artwork from the final parts here at the end of part 4 and part 5, share them. I really enjoy looking at them as well. Yeah, so I mean, we longest pod I think we've ever done here. I'm glad that we were able to give the Way of Kings finale pod the justice it deserved. Dying to know what happens in the Words of Radiance and as we move forward. But I mean, we're gonna die. You have the Warbreaker copy yet, Tom?
I do.
Yeah, I have it as well. So I'm gonna probably be diving into that tomorrow. We might take a little just maybe a week off between books here just to gather our things, but I mean, I'm always down to pod next week if we find the time. Won't be too long of a delay between we start Warbreaker and we're hoping to start Words of Radiance. Not too long in the future here. So, with that being said, I think a pod has no name out. Is that right, Tom? We have anything else to add?
No, I think I'm working on another project, something else for the website. But I am excited to dive into Warbreaker. So maybe I'll say fuck it and we'll just do it next week. But whatever.
Yeah, if you're looking for any NFL draft content, definitely follow Tom on Twitter. What is it, TomDS215?
That's correct.
So follow Tom on Twitter. He's doing some NFL draft content. He's been working on that, watching a lot of Buffalo Bills games in preparation. So feel free to follow him. Check that out. And follow us on the Twitter page. The pod has no name. I'll keep you updated on when we're looking to record our first episode of Warbreaker. Once again, it's going to be the prologue to chapter 15, including chapter 15. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys then. I hope you enjoyed the Way of Kings finale, and we'll see you guys on the Reddit page and on Twitter to discuss even more.
Yeah, if 10 people retweet the article that will be coming out at some point in the next week and a half here before the NFL draft about the Buffalo Bills, then I will do Way of Kings characters as Buffalo Bills.
Oh, this is huge.
I think we have a treat for you guys. So yeah, just try to support your co-host here.
Yeah, I'm putting Tom's Twitter on the I'll put Tom's Twitter on the post, and we can see if we can hit that goal. All right.
Alrighty.
All right. Until next time, Nameless.